When I saw people talking about how fights were breaking out over arcs at a Polycon, I was just like, wow, they really out here like throwing bows over fairy dick. Hi everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. And today I wanted to talk about arcs because people have been buzzing about how there were fights over arcs at a Polycon. That's not surprising to me because people are always fighting over books at a Polycon. Last year it was people fighting over special editions. So at a Polycon, it's expected for authors to have these special editions of their books and or exclusive arcs. Like, a lot of authors were complaining, especially the indie ones, that they couldn't keep up with the traditionally published authors who were coming with these fancy sprayed edged copies because it's more money out of their pocket to be able to produce those copies, and then you have to hope that they actually sell so that you can recoup your money. But people are like expecting these fancy editions when you get there, and they're going around trying to collect the best looking book. And this is a problem that we've been talking about for a while in the book community, how it's become more about collecting books on your shelf to say you have all these books and to give the aesthetic of being well read and being a reader rather than the reading itself. And before, when we were talking about it, people were like, mind your business, let people enjoy things. Being a book collector is different than being a reader. Okay, but in the case of arcs, arcs are supposed to be for review. They are advanced review copies. The idea of getting them is that you are going to read it and discuss it before the book comes out. Now, I get arcs as a reviewer. These are actually two of the recent ones that I have. I have The Ghost of Gwendolyn Montgomery, which is by Clarence Haynes. I'm super excited to read this one. And I also have This Is Not a Ghost Story. This is by Amory. This is her debut novel. Another one that I'm excited to read. Both of these books come out in June, so I need to read it like May so that I can get out my reviews on time. And I'm grateful when I get arcs, especially of books that I'm like highly anticipating, because part of it just does feel good. Like, I got to see it a little earlier. I get to read it like before I shell out my money for it to see if I like it, and I get to talk about it with my community. The goal is to be able to get the books, read it, and talk about it so people know should they buy it or not. Especially in this economy when people are tightening their purse straps and locking down their wallet a little bit, you kind of want to know, like, is the book good or not before you spend money on it, especially if it's a debut author, like you've never read their work before. It's just like, okay, is their book good or bad? Or if it's an author you're familiar with, but maybe they're jumping genres. Like, a lot of authors have been jumping genres. We've talked about that on this channel. Like, people will start off writing in romance, like for 2 books, and then they'll jump to horror. Well, I don't know how they write horror compared to romance, so arcs can help because then somebody can read it and tell you like if they actually seem to know what they were doing in that genre. And I've had author friends recently tell me, I don't think that they should do arcs because people don't go buy the book. And so that's a kind of like a yes and no type of scenario. The truth is, like, it's going to be different depending on who your publisher is, how your book is being distributed. For an indie author, they're putting out the book themselves. If they do an abundance of arcs, yes, a lot of people aren't going to buy their book because they're getting it for free, unless they really, really, really do want to support that author. And that's because with the indie authors, a lot of times you're only able to get their book online. So if you already have an e-copy of it, some people may feel, okay, I don't need to actually buy a copy now because I've read the book. For me, with indie authors, I do get arcs from them occasionally, but I try not to like sign up for any arcs that I don't think I'm going to absolutely read, because I feel really bad like if I take a book from an indie author and then I don't read it in time for their release. Normally what ends up happening is I end up buying the ebook anyway. Even like some of my friends who will end up sending me a finished copy in the mail, I already bought a copy of the ebook of their book. And that's just me, but I know not everybody is like that. For somebody who's traditionally published, especially if your book is traditionally published through one of the big 5 publishers, them sending out arcs really isn't going to affect your bottom line that much, because like your total audience is not just people online. And I think a lot of authors forget that you you have booksellers and librarians who have access to the publisher's catalogs. I mean, technically, even as a reviewer, I have access to the publisher's catalogs. I can go on Edelweiss and view the catalogs to see what books I'm interested in. But the people who are getting arcs in that case are just a small percentage of your overall audience. And sometimes, again, when people get your book as an arc and they read it and they love it and they shout it out to everyone who will listen, that affects your sales. In that, okay, if I see somebody really talking about this book online and it's somebody I can trust, because not every person who's calling themselves an influencer or reviewer can be trusted, I'm like, okay, I need to get that book too. Let me see how much it costs. And the book cost of books right now is an issue. Some of them are so high. So sometimes I'll just be like, okay, let me request it on my libraries and see which one gets it first, and then I'll read it then. That happened with a couple of books recently where I just saw people online raving about them because they had like an arc of it, and then I saw it and I immediately put in for a library hold. Now, publishers don't just do arcs, they also do finished copies, which I get those as well. So I have 2 right here. I have The Love Simulation and I have No Ordinary Love. Both of these were published by Berkeley. A lot of times at Berkeley, they won't necessarily give out as many print copies of arcs, but they'll give out more print finished copies. It's a little bit harder to get a print arc from them because they limit those a little bit more. And I feel like when I get a print finished copy, there's less urgency for me to pick up the book and read it right away. Like, if I get an arc, there's a date that it's supposed to come out by, so I'm just like, okay, I'm going to prioritize this book because it's an arc. I want to get my review up on or before release day, or at least during release week. And I'm gonna prioritize that and read it over some of my books that I have finished copies of that can sit on my shelf a little bit longer. And I know for me, I'm kind of behind lately, so unfortunately there's some arcs that I haven't got to yet that I'm still playing catch up, because you also can't read everything. It's one of the reasons why I've been trying to really limit like what I say yes to, or what I request, because I'm like, am I actually going to read this, or do I just want to read it because it has a pretty cover, or because people are talking about it, or whatever the reason may be. And then there are the publishers who will send you unsolicited arcs. So I get a lot of unsolicited arcs sent from a certain big 5 publisher, and I'm never going to read those books. Those of you who've been following me for a while have seen me unhaul many a book from the publisher. That just was never going to be me. Like, because I have a platform where I highlight diverse books, they think that's like a catch-all for diversity. So they send all types of books by white authors to me. And I'm probably not going to read most of those books. Like, I mainly read books by authors of color. And Miss WC Reader, I prioritize mostly women and women of color in particular. I do read men of color though too. Always got to show them some love. But I'm likely to prioritize reading authors of color versus reading white authors. They already get a lot of support, so I don't really feel like my support does much. Plus, they're just like, that's not my audience. People don't come here to listen to me talk about white books. And there's certain books I get, like memoirs of politicians and stuff. I don't read political books like that. I barely read nonfiction. So it doesn't make sense to send me nonfiction books about white politicians. My audience is not going to pick up those books. So sometimes I'll get the emails and I'll ignore them. But even if I ignore them, the publisher will still send them to me anyway. Or sometimes they'll send me a book unsolicited, and it does happen to be by an author of color, but it's not an author of color that I'm particularly checking for. Like, I don't do a lot of like contemporary YA that is very trauma based, and for some reasons publishers like to send those books my way, even though I've said countless times on here I don't really enjoy those books. And so then I end up having to give them away. A lot of times they end up in my little free library if I don't find somebody to give it to directly. And I don't feel bad about that anymore. Like, I don't feel bad if I don't get 2 books that I never asked for to begin with, because I never asked for those books. And I think that these publishers do need to be more mindful about just sending out books willy-nilly, because that doesn't really help the authors. It would be better to send out the books to somebody who is actually going to read it first and foremost. That way they can talk about it on their platform. That way it can do its job of actually boosting the visibility of the book, because reviews also help boost the visibility of a book, whether it's good or bad. When people are reviewing a lot on Goodreads and Amazon, it pushes the books more through the algorithm. And we know that people like to flock to negativity too, so you have that subset of people who will all rush to pick up a book because everybody's talking about how bad it is, and I gotta read for myself to see how bad this book is. I really don't have the patience or the time right now to hate read per se, so I'm not doing that. But I understand why people do it. And so while I don't think they should get rid of physical arcs altogether, because not everybody can read e-arcs either, I go between. I'll do e-arcs, I will do the finished audiobook that they send out early, I will do physical, like finished copies or physical arcs. It really depends, because sometimes you're in certain settings too, like if I'm at work, I can't do an audio arc. It has to be on my phone, or it has to be physical, and in my previous job, it would have had to be a physical book for me to try and read it during work. Now, for the most part right now, I don't have time to read at work unless I'm on my lunch break, so that's not even an option for me. But in certain settings, like a physical book is going to work best. Plus also sometimes, you know, you get tired of reading in a specific format, or you get eye strain from reading on your phone too long. Sometimes I'm trying to limit reading, because I don't have a Kindle, I'm trying to limit reading on my phone because it can be a distraction, because I'll want to do this on my phone or do this on my phone or do this instead of just concentrating on the book. So sometimes that just having a physical arc forces me to fully engage with the story in front of me, which I do appreciate at times. And so I also see how, like, people just, like, being able to hold up, like, the physical book too makes a difference. Like, it is a little bit of a hassle sometimes for like if I'm making something for Instagram or YouTube or something, for me to not have the physical book, because then I have to go in and edit it. So I usually have to take the video off my phone, put it onto the computer, edit it, transfer it over, upload. That's just some extra steps, where if I just have the book and I can hold it up like this quick, I can make the quicker short or reel and get it out to you guys faster. It's just like a little bit less work there. So I definitely understand the frustrations. I think that the publisher should stop the exclusive fancy covered arcs. I noticed them starting that. Well, I don't know if it was a thing before 2020, but I noticed in like 2020 and beyond, it definitely became a thing, especially since we were all at home. We couldn't go to these book events where people were gathering all these arcs. Like, people had to get creative with getting people to pick up certain books because everybody was reading, and it's like, how do I make my book stand out more? And we started to see like covers being made specifically for the arcs. Like, they would have special foiling on them, they would have different pictures, and we started getting like a frenzy of like, oh, I have to get the special arc edition and the regular edition, and like people wanted to collect them for their shelves and stuff like that. And I never liked that, because arcs are supposed to be cheap. They are supposed to be books that you quickly make, like bad, like not quality paper. They're just supposed to be out for people to be able to review. Once they started doing them, those exclusive arcs with the special covers, and then they started giving all these fancy gifts with them, like I was seeing some designer skincare and stuff in some of these art boxes. And I'm not saying it's wrong to do like a promo box by any means. I've accepted quite a few over my time, and I post my unboxing of them, not really here so much on YouTube, but on my Instagram. And I think they are a great way to promote book, but it also has created like this competition between influencers, like who can get the most hyped art, who can get like all the book boxes. Even if they're not interested in the book, you kind of want the box because you want to see what kind of cool stuff that you get from it, and it detracts from the actual book. Like, we're in a time, and I said it in the previous book, where in the previous video, where a lot of people are trying to make book influencing a full-time career. And I understand why you would want to be paid for the time you're putting in, because it does take time to have to sit down and get made up or script a video or just film it in general, like, and sit down and talk about the books. Most of us aren't just sitting down and like off the cuff coming up with stuff. A lot of times we do have to kind of figure out like where you're going with what your video idea is before you sit down and film something. So I get it, but there's just too much competition right now, where it's like, well, I want to be a top influencer, so I have to get all the exclusive books that everybody is talking about. And then we're seeing where people will get online now and complain, such and such publisher didn't send me this book yet, and I'm seeing everybody else getting this book. Whole time the book is actually en route to them. They just probably are in the next like set of people who are getting shipped the book or something. So then like they pop up with the book shortly after, and it's like everybody's like, oh my gosh, that begging for arcs online worked, and now I'm gonna go do the same thing and try and bully the publisher into sending me an arc. And I just find that really weird. And again, it detracts from the actual stories themselves, because there's a lot of people, they get so many books sent to them, and they're not always like open about how many books they get sent to them, that I cannot even remember like or think of like the books they actually love. Like if somebody were to say, oh, what is so and so's signature books that they always talk about, I'm just like, oh, I don't even know, because they talk about so many books all the time, it just gets kind of lost. And so we definitely need to change how ARCs are distributed, maybe not send people a book just because they have a big following, especially if it's not in line with what they usually read and promote. And also, let's not go overboard at the cons with having so many different copies that people are fighting over them. Let's not overhype an ARC to the point where it's like people feel like they gotta go pay thousands of dollars on eBay just to say they have it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!